couldn't believe how much effort I'd put into her birthday party. It was my idea from the start. Every detail, every dollar, every late night spent planning. I wanted it to be perfect for her, my wife of 4 years, the woman I'd built my life around. The venue was this gorgeous rooftop place downtown with a view of the city skyline that made your jaw drop. I'd ordered a 5-tier cake, chocolate and vanilla swirled together, her favorite. There was a champagne tower too, the kind you see in movies with glasses stacked so high they sparkled under the twinkling lights I'd paid extra to have strung up. I even had flowers flown in from halfway across the world. Orchids bright and exotic, because she'd once said they were her dream bouquet. It cost me a fortune, but I didn't care. This was her night, and I wanted her to feel like the center of the universe. I stood there in my best suit, watching her laugh and mingle with our 60 guests, friends, family, people we'd known forever. I was proud. Tired, sure, but proud. She looked beautiful in the dress I'd picked out with her months ago, her hair catching the light just right. I thought, this is it. This is what marriage is about, making her happy. Then she grabbed the microphone. I figured she'd say something sweet. Maybe thank me for pulling it all together. Instead, she raised her glass and started talking about Damon Rivera. My guiding light, she called him, her voice loud and clear over the hum of the crowd. The one who's been there for me through the toughest times. I stood there frozen, my smile stuck on my face like it didn't know what else to do. Damien, the guy she worked with, the one she'd mentioned a few times, always with this casual tone that I never thought twice about. My chest tightened, but I told myself to breathe, to wait it out. Maybe she'd get to me next. She didn't. Instead, she turned to me with this little smirk like she was about to pull off some big joke. She handed me a gift bag, small and light, and said, "For you, honey." People chuckled, thinking it was cute. I opened it, expecting maybe a watch or a tie, something normal. But no. Inside was a black t-shirt, designer brand, folded perfectly. I pulled it out, held it up, and there it was in bold white letters. Divorced. The crowd went quiet for a second. Then a few nervous laughs broke through. She grinned like it was the funniest thing in the world, like she'd just won some comedy award. My hands shook as I stared at the word divorced. 4 years of marriage, all the sacrifices, all the nights I stayed up late paying bills or planning things like this. And she thought this was edgy, funny. My throat burned. I felt every pair of eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. I could have yelled. I could have thrown the shirt in her face and stormed off right then. But I didn't. I set the bag down, reached into my pocket, and pulled out the Cartier bracelet I'd bought her as her real birthday gift. It was gold, sleek, expensive. Something I'd saved up for because I knew she'd love it. I placed it on the table next to the cake, right where everyone could see it. No words, no fuss. I just turned and walked out. The air hit my face as I stepped outside, sharp and cold. But I didn't stop. I heard the chatter fade behind me, the clink of glasses, the hum of confusion. I kept walking, my shoes clicking against the pavement, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back in there. Not for her. Not for anyone. That t-shirt wasn't just a joke. It was a declaration. And I wasn't about to stand there and take it. The night air slapped me hard as I stepped out of that rooftop party, my tie flapping loose in the wind. I didn't even make it 10 steps before I stopped, my hands clenched into fists. I'd left the bracelet on the table, her birthday gift, the one I'd spent months picking out. The one I'd imagined her wearing with that big smile she used to give me. It was sitting there abandoned, like some kind of trophy for her little stunt. And that t-shirt, divorced, kept flashing in my mind, those white letters burning holes into my skull. I couldn't leave it like that. I couldn't let her have the last word, not after she'd humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. So I turned around. My legs moved before my brain caught up, carrying me back through the glass doors, past the confused valet guy who'd barely opened his mouth to ask for my ticket. The party noise hit me again. Laughter, clinking glasses, some upbeat song she'd picked for the playlist. I didn't look at anyone, not her friends, not mine, not the waiters weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne. I marched straight to that table, the one with the cake and the flowers and the bracelet gleaming under the lights. She was still up front chatting with Damien, her back to me, probably thinking I'd slink off like some wounded dog. I grabbed the bracelet, the cool metal slipping into my palm, and shoved it back into my pocket. No one said a word. A few heads turned, eyes wide, but nobody stopped me. Maybe they were too shocked. Maybe they didn't care. Either way, I was done. I walked out again, this time for good. The valet had my car ready by then, a black sedan I'd bought 2 years ago. One of the few things I'd insisted on keeping when she'd pushed for that overpriced SUV she wanted instead. I slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and just sat there for a minute, staring at the dashboard. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. The engine hummed to life, and I pulled out onto the street, the city lights blurring past me like they didn't even matter. 5 minutes later, it started. The first call, my phone lit up on the passenger seat, her name glowing on the screen. I didn't pick up. It rang out, went silent, then lit up again and again. By the time I hit the highway, it was nonstop. Buzz after buzz. Her name stacking up in missed call notifications. I glanced at it once, just long enough to see the number climb. 10 calls, 20, 50. I kept driving, the road stretching out dark and empty ahead of me. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. What did she want? To apologize? To laugh some more? To explain why she thought handing me that t-shirt in front of everyone was okay? I didn't care. Not anymore. The phone kept going, relentless, like she thought she could wear me down if she just tried hard enough. I pulled into my usual parking spot outside our apartment. No, my apartment now, and checked the screen. 157 missed calls, all from her. I turned the phone off, the silence hitting me like a wave. I sat there in the dark, the engine ticking as it cooled, and something clicked inside me. This wasn't just about the party. It wasn't just about walking out. That t-shirt, those calls, her thanking Damien instead of me, it was the end of us. For years of bending over backwards, of putting her first, of thinking, if I just tried harder, she'd see me the way I saw her. And for what? To be the punchline of her big night. I grabbed my keys and stepped out, the cold biting at my face again. The apartment building loomed above me, quiet and familiar. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a shell, like something I'd outgrown without even realizing it. I didn't know what came next, where I'd go, what I'd do. But I knew one thing. I wasn't answering those calls. Not tonight. Not ever. I'd left the party, sure, but I'd left the marriage too, and she could keep calling all she wanted. I was already gone. I woke up the next morning on a lumpy couch in Theo's spare bedroom, the kind of place that smelled faintly of old coffee and dust. My suit jacket was crumpled on the floor, my tie slung over a chair like a dead snake. I'd driven straight to his place last night after leaving the party. My phone still off. Those 157 missed calls locked away in the dark. Theo didn't ask many questions when I showed up. Just opened the door, handed me a beer, and let me crash. Now, sunlight crept through the blinds, slicing across the bare walls, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell had happened to my life. Theo shuffled in, his hair a mess, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one on the table next to me, the steam curling up in lazy swirls, and sat down in an armchair that creaked under his weight. "You don't come back from something like that," he said, his voice low and certain like he'd already thought it through. I didn't answer right away. I just took the coffee, the heat burning my fingers through the mug, and let his words sink in. He was right. I knew it the second she handed me that t-shirt. Divorced like it was some clever little gift. But it wasn't just the shirt. It was everything before it. All the pieces I'd ignored because I loved her, because I thought that's what you do when you're married. I sipped the coffee bitter and strong, and my mind started replaying it all. The time she'd asked me to move cities for her job, promising it'd be worth it. I'd left a good gig behind, packed up our life, and followed her. Then there were the promotions I'd turned down because they'd mean less time at home, and she didn't like that. "We're a team," she'd say, and I'd nod, thinking it made sense. Vacations, too. I'd skip them. Working extra shifts so she could chase her dreams, fly off to conferences, build her career. I never complained. I figured it was my job to support her, to be the steady one while she shined. And she did shine. People loved her. Her charm, her laugh, the way she could light up a room. I loved that about her too. But last night, under those twinkling lights I paid for, she'd lit up for someone else. Damian Rivera, her guiding light. Not me. I set the mug down, my hands still shaky from the night before, and looked at Theo. "I gave her everything," I said, my voice rough like it hadn't woken up yet. He nodded, leaning back in the chair. "Yeah, man. And she gave you a t-shirt." That stung, but it was true. I thought about the party again. 60 people all watching her toast Damian, all seeing her hand me that bag. I wondered what they thought. Did they laugh because they agreed with her? Did they feel sorry for me? Or did they just not care? I'd spent so long trying to make her happy, to make us work. And in one night, she'd turned me into a joke. The spare room felt smaller then, the walls pressing in, and I stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, the city was waking up, cars honking, people rushing to work. My life used to feel like that. Busy, purposeful, moving forward. Now it was just me standing still, holding a coffee mug and a bruised ego. Theo watched me sipping his own drink, not pushing me to talk. He didn't have to. We've been friends since college. He knew me better than most. "What now?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But as I stared out at the skyline, something shifted. I wasn't the guy who waited around anymore, the one who nodded and smiled while she called the shots. That guy walked out last night. The bracelet was still in my pocket. I felt its weight against my leg, a reminder of what I'd taken back. Maybe Theo was right. You don't come back from something like that. But maybe you don't have to. Maybe you just keep walking, figure out who you are without the weight of someone else's spotlight. I turned to him, my jaw tight. "I'm done being disposable," I said. He raised his mug. Good. About time. I didn't turn my phone back on for 2 days after the party. Those 157 missed calls sat there waiting, but I wasn't ready to face them or her. I stayed at Theo's, sleeping on that creaky couch, waking up to the sound of his coffee maker gurgling in the kitchen. It was quiet there, simple, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to be anywhere or do anything for someone else. But I couldn't hide forever. I had a life to sort out, a marriage to end, and I wasn't about to let it drag on louder than it already had. So I made a call, not to her, but to Clara Mendez, a lawyer I'd heard about through a guy at work. She was sharp, tough, the kind of woman who didn't mess around. We met at her office downtown, a small space with big windows and stacks of files on every surface. She didn't smile much, just shook my hand and got straight to it. "What's your goal here?" she asked, pin poised over a notepad. I leaned back in the chair, the bracelet still in my pocket like a stone I couldn't shake. "I want out," I said. "Clean, quiet, no drama." She nodded like she'd heard it 100 times before. "Good. I don't do loud divorces. They're a waste of time." I liked her already. I told her about the party, the t-shirt, Damien, everything. She didn't flinch, just scribbled notes and asked questions. How long we'd been married, what we owned, who paid for what. I told her I'd covered most of it. The apartment, the cars, the party itself. Clara raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. By the end of the hour, she had a plan. "We'll file quietly," she said. "No public mess. You keep what's yours, she keeps what's hers. If she fights, we'll deal with it." I trusted her. She had this edge like she'd seen too many marriages fall apart to care about the theatrics. For her, it was business. For me, it was survival. I left her office feeling lighter, like I'd handed over a weight I didn't know I was carrying. That night, I moved back into the apartment. Our apartment. Though it didn't feel like ours anymore. She wasn't there, probably at her sister's or some friend's place, licking her wounds after I didn't pick up. I didn't care where she was. I just wanted my space back. The next morning, I went to work. I'd taken a day off after the party, but now I was ready to dive in. My job wasn't glamorous project management for a tech firm, but I was good at it. I walked into the office, past the cubicles and the coffee machine, and sat at my desk. My inbox was a mess, but I didn't mind. I started sorting through emails, flagging the urgent ones, setting up meetings. It felt good to focus on something I could control. Around noon, my boss, Gregory, stopped by. He was a big guy, loud voice, always wearing ties that didn't quite match his shirts. "You're back," he said, leaning against my desk. "Heard you had a rough weekend." I shrugged. Something like that. He didn't push, just tapped the folder he was holding. "Got a new client?" "Tough one. You want it?" I looked up at him. Normally, I'd hesitate. Big clients meant long hours, and she'd always hated when I worked late. But she wasn't here now. "Yeah," I said. "I'll take it." Gregory grinned. That's what I like to hear. The rest of the day flew by. I dug into the project. Some startup needing a full system overhaul, and lost myself in the details. Spreadsheets, timelines, budgets. It was messy, complicated, and exactly what I needed. By the time I left the office, the sun was gone, and my head was clear. I stopped answering her texts that week. They'd started after the call stopped. Short ones at first, like, "Where are you?" and "We need to talk." Then longer rambling ones about how she didn't mean it, how it was just a joke. I didn't reply. Clara had the papers ready by Friday, and I signed them in her office, my hand steady on the pen. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about her anymore. It was about me, about taking back the life I'd let slip away. Gregory called me into his office that afternoon. "You're killing it," he said. "Keep this up. We're talking promotion." I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward. Not for her, not for us, but for me. I started running every morning before the sun came up. When the city was still half asleep and the streets were mine, it wasn't something I planned. Just woke up one day at Theo's, my head buzzing with everything, and decided I needed to move. I pulled on an old pair of sneakers, a t-shirt, and some shorts I hadn't worn in years, and hit the pavement. The first mile was brutal. My lungs burned, my legs felt like lead, and I thought about turning back, but I didn't. I kept going, one step after another, the cold air biting at my face. By the time I got back to Theo's, sweat was dripping down my neck and my chest heaved like I just fought a war. It hurt, but it felt good, like I was shaking off pieces of the man I used to be. I'd spent so long sitting still, waiting for her to notice me, to need me, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to push myself. After that, it became a routine. Up at 5, out the door by 5:15, running through the dark until the sky turned gray. Mile after mile, I shed the weight of it all. The party, the t-shirt, the years of saying yes when I should have said no. I moved out of Theo's that week, back into the apartment full-time. She still wasn't there, and I didn't ask where she'd gone. Clara had served her the divorce papers by then, so maybe she was hiding out, figuring out her next move. I didn't care. I started changing things, threw out the throw pillows she'd picked, the ones I'd always hated, and replaced them with a plain gray blanket. I rearranged the furniture, turned the living room into something that felt like mine. It wasn't just about the space, though. It was about me. I set up a corner by the window with a small desk, a lamp, and a stack of notebooks. I started writing things down, ideas, plans, stuff I'd always wanted to do, but never had the time or guts for. Vision boards came next. Pinned up on the wall with pictures of places I wanted to see, projects I wanted to tackle. I wasn't just rebuilding a room, I was rebuilding myself. Work got intense, but I loved it. The client Gregory gave me was a nightmare. Demanding, picky, always changing their mind. But I handled it. Late nights at the office turned into early mornings running, then back to the desk with coffee in hand. I was tired, sure. But it was the good kind of tired. The kind that comes from doing something for yourself. One day I got a call from Sasha, a kid I'd met at a networking event a year back. He was young, maybe 25, with big ideas and no clue how to make them happen. "I've got this startup," he said, his voice fast and excited. "Me and my buddy Omar, we need help." I met them at a diner downtown, the kind with sticky tables and waitresses who call you Ha. Sasha had wild hair and a laptop covered in stickers. Omar was quieter, scribbling numbers on a napkin. They pitched me their idea, a delivery app for small businesses, something local, something real. It was rough, but it had potential. "I'm not a tech guy," I told them, "but I can get you organized. Set up a plan." They grinned like I just handed them $1 million. I started meeting them once a week, going over budgets, timelines, talking them through the chaos. It wasn't paid, but it didn't matter. It felt good to help to build something from scratch. One night, after a long session with them, I sat at my desk in the apartment staring at the vision board. There was a picture of a beach in Thailand, a skyscraper in New York, a sketch of a house I'd always wanted to own. I grabbed a pen and added something new. Invest in Sasha and Omar. It wasn't just about money. I wanted it on their dream, Wanted to see it grow. The runs kept me sane. Every morning, I push a little harder, go a little farther. My body changed. My shoulders got broader, my legs stronger. But it was more than that. I stopped feeling like the guy who'd stood there holding that divorced t-shirt. I stopped waiting for her to call, to apologize, to make it right. She didn't matter anymore. The apartment wasn't a war room yet, but it was getting their plans, ideas, a life I was making for Em. I'd taken back the bracelet that night, but now I was taking back everything else, and it felt damn good. I was sitting in my office one afternoon, the sun slanting through the blinds, when my phone buzzed with a text from an old friend, Mark. He wasn't close to her, not really, but he ran in the same circles, so I figured he'd heard something. "You okay, man?" It read. "Heard she's not doing so hot." I didn't reply right away. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of the office around me, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, and thought about it. Not doing so hot? Good. I didn't wish her harm, but I wasn't about to cry over her either. I'd been pouring everything into my own life lately. Work, running, Sasha, and Omar's startup. And I felt stronger than I had in years. If she was stumbling, that was on her. Mark texted again an hour later. "Damen quit. She's scrambling at work." That got my attention. Damen Rivera, her guiding light, the guy she'd toasted at the party while I stood there like an idiot holding that t-shirt. He'd resigned. I didn't know the details. Mark didn't either. Just said it was sudden, but I could picture it. She leaned on him, built her whole image around him, and now he was gone. I didn't smile, but I didn't feel bad either. I went back to my spreadsheet, the numbers blurring for a second before I refocused. Work was my anchor now. Gregory had me leading 2 more projects, big ones, and the word promotion kept floating around. I stayed late that night, the office emptying out, just me and the glow of my computer screen. I liked the quiet. It gave me room to think. The next day, another friend, Lisa, called. She was closer to her, one of those mutual connections I hadn't cut off yet. She tried a podcast, Lisa said, her voice hesitant, like she wasn't sure I'd want to hear it. It tanked 1 episode, and people hated it. I was driving home, the phone on speaker, the city lights streaking past. "Huh?" I said, keeping it short. Lisa kept going. She's posting online again, too, trying to get her followers back, but it's not working. People keep bringing up the party. I gripped the wheel a little tighter. The party? That damn t-shirt. I didn't say much. Just let Lisa talk until she trailed off. "Thanks for the update," I said, and hung up. I didn't need to hear more. She was falling apart piece by piece, and I wasn't surprised. She'd always been good at shining when things were easy, when someone else, me, Damien, whoever, was holding her up. Now the props were gone, and she didn't know how to stand. Meanwhile, my life was taking off. Gregory called me into his office a week later, slapped a folder on his desk, and said, "You're speaking at a seminar next month. Local business thing. They asked for you." I blinked. "Me?" He laughed. That big booming sound of his. "Yeah, you. You're killing it lately. People notice." I walked out of there feeling 10 feet tall. The seminar wasn't huge, but it was mine. Something I'd earned. Then came the big one. An email landed in my inbox from a guy I'd met at a conference years back. Some hotshot professor type. "We're hosting a business summit in Dubai." It said, "Love for you to guest lecture. Your name's been coming up." Dubai. I stared at the screen, the words sinking in. I'd gone from the guy who paid for her party to the guy getting invites halfway across the world, I said yes, obviously. That night, I met Sasha and Omar at the diner again. Their app was moving slow, messy, but moving, and I'd put some money in, a small chunk from my savings. "You're like our secret weapon," Sasha said, grinning over his fries. Omar nodded, quieter, but just as excited. I felt useful, needed in a way I hadn't with her. Back at the apartment, I added Dubai to my vision board, right next to Thailand and the house sketch. The runs kept me steady every morning, pounding the pavement, my breath fogging into cool air. I was up to 6 miles now, my body leaner, my mind sharper. She was fading. Her job, her podcast, her online clout, and I was rising. Seminars, lectures, startups. The world that used to spin around her was turning toward me, and I wasn't looking back. I didn't hate her. I didn't even think about her much. But knowing she was struggling while I was climbing, that felt like justice. Quiet and clean. The kind I didn't have to fight for. I was sorting through some old files in the apartment one evening, the lamp casting a warm glow over my desk when I found it. An envelope tucked between a stack of tax returns and some random receipts. It wasn't from Clara or anything official. It was handwritten. Her familiar loopy script spelling out my name on the front. I froze for a second, my fingers hovering over it. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not since the text stopped and the divorce papers were signed. Part of me wanted to toss it straight into the trash unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. I slid it out, the paper crisp and heavy, and unfolded 4 pages of her words staring back at me. I sat down, the chair creaking under me, and started reading. "I didn't mean it," she wrote first, her pen pressing hard into the paper like she needed me to feel it. The t-shirt was supposed to be funny. A stupid joke. "I didn't think you'd leave." I stopped there, my jaw tightening. A joke. That's what she called it. Even now, 60 people watching. Damien smirking beside her, me holding that divorced shirt like some prop in her comedy show. I kept going. She filled the pages with apologies, excuses, memories. "Remember the beach trip 2 years ago?" She wrote, "You carried me through the sand when I twisted my ankle." We were good then. Yeah, we were. I remember that day sunburned, laughing, her clinging to my back as waves crashed around us. But that was before the moves, the sacrifices, the slow drift where I became the guy who paid for things while she chased her spotlight. She went on, her tone shifting, softer. "I miss you. I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone." I set the letter down for a minute, staring at the wall. Needed me. She needed me to plan her party, to fund her dreams, to stand there while she thanked Damien. But me, the real me, not the husband who said yes to everything. She hadn't needed that guy in a long time. I picked it back up, flipping to the last page. "I'm sorry," she wrote over and over like a chant. "I messed up. I want to fix it. Fix it." I almost laughed. What was there to fix? The marriage was done. Papers signed. Apartment split. Her stuff gone. She'd handed me that t-shirt and thought I'd just shrug it off. Come back. Keep playing my role. I read it all once, start to finish, then folded it neatly in half. I didn't rip it up or burn it like some dramatic movie scene. I just opened the drawer next to my desk, the one with my birth certificate, my passport, a few old photos, and slid it in there. It wasn't trash. Not exactly. It was a record. Proof of who I'd been, who she'd been, and what we'd lost. But it didn't change anything. I wasn't writing back. I wasn't calling her. I'd spent years waiting for her to see me. to say something like this. And now that she had, it didn't matter. The words were too late, too hollow. I got up, grabbed a glass of water, and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. The vision board was pinned up nearby. Dubai, Thailand, Sasha, and Omar startup. That's where my head was now. Not in her letter, not in the past. I thought about the party again, that smirk on her face when she handed me the bag. She hadn't meant it. Bulletin. She'd meant every second of it. Meant to show off to flex her new life with Damien in front of everyone. And now with him gone, her career slipping. She was scrambling, reaching back for the safety net I'd always been. I wasn't that guy anymore. The next morning, I ran my usual route. The air crisp and sharp in my lungs. 6 miles turned into 7, my legs pumping harder, my mind clear. I didn't think about the letter. I thought about the seminar next week, the lecture in Dubai. The app launched with Sasha and Omar. When I got back, I showered, dressed, and headed to work. Gregory stopped me in the hall, grinning. "You're on fire lately," he said. "Keep it up." I nodded, feeling the weight of it. Not her weight. Not anymore, but mine. The letter stayed in the drawer. A ghost I didn't need to fight. She could miss me all she wanted. I was done missing her. I started writing one night after a long day at work. Sitting at my desk with a beer in hand and the city humming outside my window. It wasn't planned. Just grabbed a notebook and let my thoughts spill out. At first, it was messy, raw, all about the party, the t-shirt, those 157 missed calls. I wrote about how it felt to stand there humiliated while she smirked and the room laughed. I wrote about walking out, taking the bracelet back, driving away. It wasn't for anyone else, just me, a way to get it out of my head and onto paper. But the more I wrote, the more it turned into something else. It wasn't just about her or us anymore. It was about what came after. Running every morning, rebuilding my life, saying no to the old me who'd waited around for her approval. I filled pages with it, night after night, the words piling up like bricks in a wall I was building around myself. One evening after a run, I typed it all into my laptop. It felt different seeing it on the screen, cleaner, sharper. I didn't know why, but I hit publish on a random blog site. No name attached, just some anonymous guy's story. I called it 157 Missed Calls, not because I wanted her to see it, but because it fit. Then I forgot about it. A week later, I checked the site. There were comments, dozens of them. "This is my life," one said. "I felt every word," said another. People I didn't know from places I'd never been reading it, connecting to it. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart thumping. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was theirs too. I kept writing. Every few days, I'd post something new. How I started running to feel alive again. How work became my lifeline. How I stopped caring what she thought. The blog grew. Hundreds of views turned into thousands. Emails started coming in. People thanking me, asking questions. "How did you move on?" One asked, "What do you do when you feel stuck?" Another wrote, I answered them, not as some expert, but as me, someone who'd been there, who'd figured it out one step at a time. It wasn't about her falling apart or me getting revenge. It was about choosing myself, about waking up every day and building something new. One morning over coffee with Theo, I told him about it. "It's a blog," I said, shrugging like it was no big deal. "People like it." He raised an eyebrow, smirking. "You're a writer now, Mr. Big Shot." I laughed. No, just a guy with a laptop, but It was more than that. The next week, a woman stopped me at a coffee shop downtown. "Are you the 157th guy?" she asked, her eyes wide. I froze, cup halfway to my mouth. Maybe." She smiled. "I read your stuff. It got me through my breakup. Thank you." I didn't know what to say. Just nodded, mumbled something about being glad it helped. She walked away, and I sat there stunned. It was real now, not just words on a screen. People were finding me, recognizing me. The blog turned into a movement. I started a newsletter, then a social media page. 157 missed calls became a thing. Readers called it that, shared it, made it their own. Companies reached out asking me to speak to write for them. I said yes to a few small gigs at first, like a local workshop where I talked about rebuilding after betrayal. 50 people showed up hanging on my words, clapping when I finished. Then bigger ones came: panels, podcasts, a guest post for a magazine. I wasn't anonymous anymore. I put my name on it, owned it. Sasha and Omar got in on it too. "You should brand this," Sasha said one night at the diner, his laptop open to the app's latest numbers. "T-shirts, man. Not divorced, but something better." I laughed, but he was serious. We tossed ideas around, and I liked it. Not for money, but for meaning. "Rebuilt," I said finally. "That's the word." They nodded, and a week later, I had a prototype, a black shirt, simple white letters. Rebuilt. It wasn't about her. It was about me, about everyone who'd read the blog and found their way back. The movement grew, and I grew with it. I wasn't just the guy who walked out anymore. I was the guy who kept going. It was pouring rain one evening when I heard the knock on my apartment door. I was in the middle of tuning my guitar, something I'd picked up again after years of letting it gather dust. The sound was sharp, insistent, 3 quick raps over the drumming of water against the windows. I set the guitar down, my stomach tightening for no reason I could name, and walked over. When I opened the door, there she was. No umbrella, no coat, just her standing there, soaked to the bone. Her hair clung to her face, mascara streaking down her cheeks. And for a second, I didn't recognize her. Not the polished version I'd known, the one who'd smirked at me under those party lights. She looked small, fragile, like the rain had washed away everything she used to be. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything at first, just stepped aside and let her walk past me. She dripped onto the floor, leaving little puddles by the couch, but I didn't care about that. I shut the door and turned to face her, arms crossed, waiting. She didn't sit, just stood there, hugging herself like she was cold. "I miss you," she said finally, her eyes locked on mine. We were good. I didn't move, didn't blink. The words hung there, heavy and wet, but they didn't hit me like they might have once. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I was good. You were lucky." She flinched like I'd slapped her, and then the tears came quiet at first, then louder, her shoulders shaking. "I messed up," she said between sobs. "I know that the party, Damien, all of it. I was stupid. I didn't mean to lose you." I watched her, this woman I'd loved for years, crying in my living room. And I waited to feel something, anger, pity, anything. But it didn't come. I'd already felt it all. The hurt, the betrayal, the slow burn of realizing I'd been invisible to her. I'd mourned months ago, mile by mile on those morning runs, page by page in my blog. She kept going, words tumbling out. "I thought I could do it without you. The job, the podcast, everything. It's gone now. Damien left and I'm drowning. And I need you. There it was again. Need. She needed me now. When her world was falling apart, when the spotlight she'd chased had flickered out, I stepped closer, not to comfort her, but to make sure she heard me. You didn't need me when you handed me that t-shirt, I said. You didn't need me when you thanked him instead of me. You don't get to need me now. Her face crumpled and she sank onto the couch, hands covering her eyes. I didn't sit. I stood there looking down at her and saw at it all the party, the calls, the letters she'd sent. This was her last play, her final shot at pulling me back. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered over and over like it could change something. I didn't say anything else. What was there to say? She'd made her choice that night, and I'd made mine when I walked out. The rain kept pounding outside, a steady roar that filled the silence between us. After a while, she stood up, wiping her face with her sleeve. I'll go, she said, her voice small. I nodded, opened the door, and watched her step back into the storm. She didn't look back, just disappeared into the dark, the rain swallowing her up. I shut the door, locked it, and stood there for a minute, listening to the quiet. It was over, really over. Not the divorce, not the papers, but the part of me that still wondered if she'd come around. She had, and it didn't matter. Later that night, I called Phil. You free? I asked. He was, so I grabbed my guitar and headed to his place. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by then, the streets slick and shiny under the street lights. We ended up on his rooftop, the city sprawling out below us, damp air cool against my skin. I played a few chords. He tapped a beat on the railing, and we didn't talk about her. We didn't need to. The music filled the space, rough and simple. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, steady kind that settles in your bones. She was gone, and I was still here. I stood backstage in Milan, the hum of the crowd seeping through the heavy curtain, my hands steady, but my heart thumping just a little faster than usual. It was a year to the day since that night. The party, the t-shirt, the moment I walked out and took my life back. Now I was here in a sleek conference center halfway across the world, about to give a keynote speech to a packed auditorium. Rebuilding after betrayal, they'd called it, and my name was on the program in bold letters. I adjusted my tie, smoothed my jacket, and took a deep breath. The stage manager gave me a nod, and I stepped out into the lights. The applause hit me like a wave. Hundreds of faces looking up, waiting. I walked to the mic, the click of my shoes loud in my ears. And for a second, I saw it all again. The rooftop venue, her smirk, that divorced shirt in my hands. Then I smiled. I once paid for a birthday party where I received a t-shirt labeled Divorced. I started, my voice clear and strong. The crowd laughed, a soft ripple. But I didn't pause. 5 minutes later, I took back the gift I gave her and my entire life with it. They went quiet then, leaning in, and I kept going. I told them about the 157 missed calls, how I left that night and didn't look back. I talked about the runs at dawn, the late nights at work, the blog that turned into a movement. I didn't mention her name. Didn't need to. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. About the people in that room who'd been broken and built themselves back up. I told them how I'd signed the divorce papers with Clara. How I'd poured myself into Sasha and Omar's startup. How I'd stood on Theo's rooftop playing guitar in the rain. Betrayal doesn't end you, I said, looking out at them. It's a door. You decide if you walk through it. The words flowed easy and true. And when I finished, the applause roared loud, long, thundering through the hall. I stepped back, my chest tight, but not with pain. With something else, pride maybe, or just the weight of knowing I'd made it. Backstage, people swarmed me. Organizers, attendees, a guy with a podcast mic asking for a quick interview. I said yes to him, to a few others, shaking hands, smiling, feeling the energy of it all. Later, I sat in my hotel room, the Milan skyline glittering outside, and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through the blog's comments, new ones from that day, people who'd been in the audience. "You changed my life," one wrote. "I'm walking through that door," said another. I set the phone down and leaned back, the quiet settling in. A year ago, I'd been the guy who paid for everything. The cake, the flowers, her dreams, only to walk away with nothing but a t-shirt and a bruised ego. Now, I was here speaking in Milan with Dubai behind me and more invites piling up. Sasha and Omar's app had launched last month, and I'd worn the rebuilt shirt at their party, grinning as they toasted me. Theo had texted me that morning. "1 year, man, you're a legend." I didn't feel like a legend. I felt like me stronger, sure, but still the guy who liked coffee too bitter and runs too long. The bracelet was still in my desk drawer back home next to her letter, but I hadn't looked at it in months. It didn't matter anymore. She didn't matter. I'd heard through Lisa she'd moved somewhere new, started over, but I didn't ask for details. That chapter was closed. I got up, poured a glass of water, and stood by the window. The city sprawling out below me. The horizon stretched wide, endless, and I thought about what came next. More speeches, maybe a book, helping Sasha and Omar grow their business. The blog was a brand now. 157 missed calls, a rallying cry for people like me who turned pain into power. I'd answered one call that night, the one I made to myself when I walked away. It wasn't about revenge, never had been. It was about reinvention, about choosing to keep going when the world expects you to fall. The crowd's applause still echoed in my head. Not for her,